on yourself, talking to yourself. That's so very important. Overcoming the negative conversation, that inner dialogue that's going on all the time, even when you don't want it to be there. You can't stop yourself right now from thinking. You can't do it. It's going on. And so learning how to empower yourself, part of doing that is standing up to yourself. You've got to stand up inside yourself sometimes and say, shut up. I was going to give a presentation, and this voice inside of me saying, you can't do this. You don't have everything it takes. Shut up. I'm behind on my bills and you're telling me what I can't do. I have got to do it. You'll get scared sometimes. Your mind will go blank on you. Some people you will allow to unnerve you. And you wonder, what's wrong with me? I'm not crazy. That's why you've got to learn to make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort to stand up inside yourself. Working on yourself, watching that inner dialogue, it will determine the quality of your life.
It's either you have it or you don't.
That sounds like excuses to me. I mean, you got to figure it out. If you really have an obsession to figure it out, you will figure it out. And every puzzle is constructed differently. Everybody has a different puzzle, man. You just got to figure out your own puzzle.
I would say start where you can start. You know, if something announces itself to you, which is a strange way of thinking about it, as in need of repair that you could repair, then, hey, fix it. You fix 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different.
It doesn't matter what you just did. It doesn't matter. It doesn't count. The count now is 0. And that's what happens when you wake up in the morning. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday. It doesn't matter how far you ran yesterday. It doesn't matter the workout you did yesterday. It doesn't matter you got on the jiu-jitsu mats yesterday. It doesn't matter you got a promotion yesterday. You wake up today, the count is 0. And that means it's go time.
Don't wait. Don't wait till tomorrow. Start today. Start now. Start being who you're supposed to be and doing what you're supposed to do now. Things just don't go your way. That's not the way the world works. You gotta make them go your way. You think things are gonna just go your way? Well, they're not gonna just go your way. You think things are gonna just happen for you? Well, they're not just gonna happen for you. You gotta make them happen. Guess what? That's the way life is. You don't have enough time. You gotta make time. It's not just gonna happen. You gotta make it happen. Go make it.
Not to bet on you. You believe in everybody else, you clap for everybody else, you support everybody else, you baking cakes and making cookies for everybody else. But when are you gonna look in the mirror and believe in the darn person you see? It's about time for you to believe in you, because you got it.
Don't let anybody ever tell you you're not good enough, okay? And so many young people think that they can't, or they don't have the potential, or somebody else is better. Forget everything about it. I mean, you know, if you really want something bad enough, you'll figure out a way to get there. It may not be exactly what you had in mind, like the Olympia 3rd place wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Okay, but I'll take 3rd place. And I really believe if you want something bad enough, you can will it to happen.
When you look at someone and you say that man or that woman has something that I don't have, you're telling yourself a justification as to why you can't do it. You're talking yourself out of it. They didn't have that ability either. They got it from showing up every day and executing, and especially when they don't feel like it.
The emptiness in your life isn't because you don't have enough rights. You have all the rights there are. You have more than you should, and it isn't because you lack consumerist options. You have Amazon and pornography, man. You can get whatever you want whenever you want it. And if that's still not working, well, what are you missing? Well, maybe you're missing the opposite of that. A little bit of restraint, a little bit of sacrifice, some responsibility. There's part of me that needs to go. There's part of me that needs to die, and it has to be given up to something higher. What part of it is of me has to go? And you look to the highest to help guide you in that. So there's a discriminating spirit within you that can help separate the chaff from the wheat. And the offering up of the chaff is the sacrificial gesture. And so that can be transformed into prayer. If you give up enough psychologically, you'll cut your losses in actuality. And of course, that's sort of what thought's for, is right? So that you can get yourself straight You can give it up in abstraction so you don't act out the pathology and then nothing dies in actuality. But that still means you have something to give up. It's like, well, oh, that's what I did wrong. Oh, it's going to hurt when that goes. It's like, yeah, but maybe you won't die. Then you offer it up as a sacrifice to something higher, because otherwise, why would you improve? And that discriminating spirit inside that judges what's in you that should be sacrificed, that wouldn't even exist unless it was existing in relationship to something higher, because there'd be nothing to serve as a judge.
Everybody has a turn back moment. You have a moment where you can go forward or you can give up. But the thing you have to keep in mind before you give up is that if you give up, the guarantee is it will never happen. That's the guarantee of quitting, that it will never happen, no way under the sun. The only way the possibility remains that it can happen is if you never give up, no matter.
Dare to do the most difficult thing that you can conceptualize. Your life will work out better than it will if you do anything else. Well, how are you going to find out if that's true? Well, it's a Kierkegaardian leap of faith. There's no way you're going to find out whether or not that's true unless you do it. So no one can tell you either. You have to be all in this game. And so the idea is, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. It's like, that's actually a fairly important caution when you're talking about not having to pay attention to what you're going to eat or what you're going to wear. It's like, what it's essentially saying is that those problems are trivial in comparison. There is no more effective way of operating in the world than to conceptualize the highest good that you can and then strive to attain it. There's no more practical pathway to the kind of success that you could have if you actually knew what success was. Responsibility is what gives your life meaning. And so then you might say, well, then take on ultimate responsibility. And what happens? You have an ultimately meaningful life. And then you might say, well, if your life is ultimately meaningful, it doesn't matter if it's punctuated by tragedy or even predicated on tragedy. It's worth it. And I think that's true. And everything I've seen indicates to me that's true. Every time I get my clients to take on more responsibility, and it isn't an injunction. You're a bad person, you should take on responsibility. It has nothing to do with that. You can define the damn responsibility. It isn't something that someone else should impose on you. It's not a matter of doing what you should do in some abstract manner. It's not that. It's the choice of what game you're going to play. And you can play the game of the seeker, I would say, and if you play that game, then everyone wins. And it's the best game you can play. And so the answer in some sense to the tragedy of life, to the catastrophe of life, to the fall, is to play that game maximally. It's in the willingness to do that the solution emerges. If you're suffering terribly, there's two options in front of you in some sense. One is you're suffering terribly and it's unjust, and you're suffering terribly because the cosmos itself is flawed in its fundamental structure. The other possibility is you're suffering at least in part because you're not everything you could be. And that's a terrible burden to take onto yourself because it's the burden of your own suffering, but it's also unbelievably hopeful. If there's something wrong with me, there's hope, because I might be able to fix it. But if there's something wrong with the structure of existence, so I'm fated to suffer in this way, then everything's despair. Yeah, well, it's a tricky business. When my daughter was young and she was really ill, I told her, don't you use your illness as an excuse. Ever, because you'll confuse yourself, then you won't know what you can do. You're going to have a hard time doing things, but if you use your illness as an excuse, if you corrupt yourself morally, which you have in some sense every right to do because of the depth of your suffering, and which would be perfectly understandable under the circumstances, it will do nothing at all but make the situation far worse.